Good evening, neighbors, and thank you so much for joining this community meeting. Of course, tonight might not be as exciting as last night's remarkable game as our Knicks came through with the nail-biting victory. Oh my, what an event. What a crazy time in New York. So, welcome to this live community forum presented by the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations and Community Groups live on YouTube. And that link will be good on our YouTube channel for people who want to view or share this after this evening. I'm Steve Anderson from West 81st Street, serving as the coalition's president. Gathered in the Zoom room by many of our board of directors and others coming. Our members include block and neighborhood associations, joined by many of the leading nonprofit organizations that offer so much to so many of us on the Upper West Side. Tonight, we introduce or reintroduce two recently elected officials, our new Manhattan Borough President, Brad Hoylman-Sigal, and our New York State Senator, Erik Bottcher. And if you have a comment or question, please enter it into the YouTube chat, and we'll share that chat with our guests for follow-up even after this session. You'll find the coalition's contact information in the chat too. And please, if you want to know more about block associations, wondering what it takes to organize or revive, be in touch. And do sign up for our every other month monthly newsletter. So first up is someone many of us have come to know very well and appreciate his legislative efforts in the state Senate for quite a few years, in the past several years representing the Upper West Side. Late last night, our newish Manhattan Borough President declared today OG Ananobi Appreciation Day. And pleased to welcome Brad Hoylman-Sigal. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Steve. Good to see everyone. You're right. It is OG Ananobi Appreciation Day. Evidence here. Steve, I printed this out just for your and your viewers' edification.
That's great.
And you know, it's so amazing what has happened in terms of the city's kind of morale. Thanks to the Knicks, of course, the Knicks, thanks to the weather, thanks to the World Cup on its way, thanks to a new city administration that is optimistic. And, I think it is very positive for all of us. And we should all be just relishing this moment as the Knicks are on the precipice of winning that championship. And speaking of precipices, quite literally, one opened today. Here at 1 Center Street, where you can go to the 36th floor, Steve. It is a new observation deck, 360 circular views of Manhattan at 1 Center. And you can sign up online for a free access pass. It is the cheapest, and I think the only free municipal viewing platform in the nation. So really extraordinary. And again, part of, I think, the optimism that we see. You know, one of my earliest efforts as borough president, they called me, Steve, to say, you as Manhattan Borough President get to welcome visitors into Manhattan with the street sign. And so we came up with this street sign, which is a tribute to Barbara Streisand and Funny Girl. So you'll see that on the Brooklyn Bridge. And that's going to be our theme as we march in the Pride Parade in a couple of weeks. So happy Pride, everyone. I'm very honored to be, as a matter of fact, the first LGBTQ borough president in the history of the city of New York that we know of. And it's really an honor to move forward on that front. But I want to just talk about a few things that my office is working on, and I guess we'll take questions. Is that how it works, Steve?
Absolutely. But if you could talk about the arts and about volunteerism,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes, indeed. And so the arts are central to our borough, to our city. They are an enormous generator of jobs. And they also create really the impetus for so many people to want to move to New York City. And that's just not people in the arts. That's people who want to work here, who want to raise a family here, companies that want to have their employees here. I think of the arts and our mass transit system as kind of the parallel tracks, if you will, of what makes New York City so special. And the arts belong to everyone. I believe the arts are a cultural asset. So with that in mind, one of my earliest initiatives was to funnel the entirety of our capital dollars, $50 million, your tax dollars, into arts and cultural institutions. So we're from Inwood to the Battery. We are funding exclusively arts and cultural institutions as part of our capital initiative. And we're doing it in a way that is somewhat innovative. We're requiring the recipient institution to strive to match our public dollars. So we are about, and I hope soon to announce that we're converting our $50 million into at least $60 million with $10 million worth of private funds matching the public funds. That's been good for institutions. Not only do they get more money, but they now have an incentive to go to their trustees, their corporate donors, their supporters, and say, the borough president has this money for us if we can match it. And so very proud of that effort so far in my team for getting that underway. And that money is soon going to be announced along with our match. So I'm thrilled about that. The third thing I'd like to mention, which you touched upon, and thank you for your help with it already, which is the Manhattan Borough President's Volunteer Corps. One of the things when I was speaking to Gail Brewer and Mark Levine and Ruth Messenger and Scott Stringer, we have this wealth of former Manhattan Borough presidents that I can lean on for advice. And they almost uniformly said that one of the things that they see and feel and hear in Manhattan is that New Yorkers want to do something. They want to participate. They want to be part of an effort to help immigrant neighbors, to make certain that Manhattanites aren't evicted, to ensure that kids have a safe space to play or to read. And Mark really encouraged me, along with Gail, to build on the volunteer corps that was begun under those two borough presidents. And we're aiming for 1,000 volunteers in Manhattan to participate in everything from the Big Apple Greeting Program, which, by the way, Ruth Messenger started close to 40 years ago, which is a group of volunteers who are deployed at big public events and tourist locations to meet tourists, as they say, where they are. That's often, lining up to get a hot dog or getting a ticket for a boat ride around the borough. But that's a really great program, and we're connecting our volunteer corps to Big Apple greeters, in particular because of the World Cup. Of course, that's just a couple of weeks away. The second opportunity for volunteers is the tree census, which occurs every decade, just like the regular census. We found that trees do not return their census forms. So it requires a volunteer corps to go out and actually count the trees that are in our parks. And that's really important for scientific purposes, to also address trees that are, sick and need attention or pruning, as well as to understand where we are in that decade plus long initiative called A Million Trees. We have some great trees, that's what they call them, in Manhattan, trees that are 100 years old, several that are over 200 years old. And we have this old growth forest in Inwood Hill Park, one of the few remaining in the New York City area. And one of the things I'm looking at is how to protect that old growth forest from brush fires. There are a couple occurred last year. So look forward to report on that. And I don't know how much more time I have, but I want to thank everyone who applied for community boards and thank my team and the over 30 nonprofit organizations that helped us review community boards through an independent selection process. We have most of those spots filled. There's a few that are open and a couple of boards, but that was a great effort on the part of my team, and really grateful for that. And then I'll mention something that's often on, at the top of New Yorkers' minds: dog waste. And we know that there are efforts to try to get New Yorkers to pick up after their dogs, and that's very important. But one of my promises when I ran for borough president was to have neighborhood report cards so that community members could see how their neighborhood compared to other parts of the borough. And that's kind of important because some of us feel like there are better city services, for example, in parts of Manhattan than in other parts. I might say the Upper East Side versus East Harlem. I don't know for sure, but that's a common.
You're in dangerous territory here. Don't.
Yeah, it's a common supposition. We want to either dispel that or figure out why, and look at data. And the best data we have is 311, and we're compiling a report card on dog waste that you can see at your local link NYC. We see that the Upper West Side's doing just about C to B, but Midtown is A plus. Community Board 2 is A plus. Lower Manhattan is A. So there are reasons, though. There are reasons that we have concluded why dog waste complaints vary, and one of them is that there's a growing trend of complaints, a percentage that is 39% increase over 2024. CB7, Upper West Side, of course, accounts for about 7.5% of Manhattan's dog waste complaints. 112 dog waste complaints were filed in CB7 during our study period, which was from 2024 to 2026. And we also know that there are seasonal patterns. A winter is dramatically worse. We all kind of read about those dog waste complaints when the snow was so deep and the temperature was so low. But we also know that there's a connection between dog waste complaints and the lack of waste bins and the lack of dog waste baggy containers. So particularly in Upper Manhattan. So we want to drill down on how we can get more waste bins available and more dog waste collection bins for members of the public. I know the city council is working on that issue in their current budget. So I really strongly support that.
Can we just jump in with a couple of quick questions for you before you run?
Please, let's do it.
Okay, so many of our neighbors have deep concerns, and I say, Brad, respectfully. We use your first name as affectionately, not as disrespectfully. Even I think you know that. Deeply concerned about the number of people on the street who clearly are not doing well. They're obviously in desperate need of attention, and it creates for many a public safety worry, both for those people and for neighbors and residents. And what's your thinking on how we can actually do better, more successfully addressing this issue? Because it is an issue that is very pointed on the Upper West Side for many of my neighbors.
You cut out of the first part of the question. I'm so sorry, Steve.
What we're talking about really is a number of people on the street who are clearly not doing well, who are desperately in need of attention. And there are many attempts by organizations who are on the forefront of reaching out. And we know it's challenging, but I think many of my neighbors feel we've really got a public safety issue here. And we need to be more successful in the efforts. If the efforts underway are not successful enough, then maybe new strategies need to be initiated.
Well, this is a vexing problem that we've seen only increase in years. The homeless population is stubbornly high. I participated in the Hope Count um, over the last, I guess it was like 4 months ago when I first became borough president, and I was able to actually, meet some of those folks who are on the street who don't want to be in the shelter system because, rightly, in their perception, they think it's unsafe for themselves. We need to build more housing, is really the bottom line. That's one of the charges of the borough president, as far as I can see. I'm happy to have approved 1,400 new units of housing across Manhattan since I became borough president in January. 660 of those are affordable. We certainly need more supportive housing for those individuals who are struggling with mental health, and that wraparound support is crucial. Look, the governor and the mayor have both released plans to help homeless folks, and it's not always the case that those efforts are successful. I keep on my desk a funeral card uh, of Michelle Go, who I think many of us remember was pushed from a subway platform to her death back in 2022. And when I was in the state Senate, I actually passed a bill to address that very problem by which her assailant, you know, was an example of, which is individuals who are struggling with mental illness who are released without discharge plans in place. And there are infamous examples in recent months of that happening. So that bill is now law. I hope we can see the benefits of it. When somebody goes to an emergency room, they should not be discharged 2 hours later. We know there aren't enough mental health beds. And that's why discharge planning is so key for the both the protection of the general public, the peace of mind for people who take mass transit or are on the streets, and for people who are homeless themselves and have mental health issues. The truth is that somebody with a mental health problem is more likely to be the object of violence than they are likely to be the perpetrator of it. So there are good reasons to want to protect those individuals from harm also. So we are in the coming weeks, in fact, hosting a convening of mental health providers to talk about this very issue. And I think one of the, leaving the Senate as a legislator and coming to this office, I understand that one of the powers I have is to convene, to bring people together, to bring different legislators from different parts of the borough together, to bring city officials together. That's what Mark and Gail did very successfully. And so we're bringing together mental health providers to talk about issues specifically related to public safety, mental health, and the housing crisis.
So I don't know that I can make a match here, but one of the most remarkable nonprofit institutions, cultural institutions in our community is the Bloomingdale School of Music, which provides tremendous opportunities. And I know that you spoke about all the funding that you've made available. And I just want to quickly let Noelle Barbera, the Director of Development and Communications, I mentioned development, okay, for Bloomingdale too, quickly pop in and respond to the comments that you've made earlier about making all these funds funds available and trying to encourage matching so that we can leverage that money. Noel, please take a moment. I know we're pressed for time, so this could be it.
I'll keep it quick. Thank you so much for being dedicated to supporting arts and culture in our city, especially now as the federal government is making such changes and there's a House bill that's going through that's zeroing out grants for arts education. We have been grateful to be MCAP grantees from the discretionary funding. And over the past couple of years, we were able to create wonderful programming for older adults in our community, particularly those in the Frederick Douglass houses. Just before you came into your role, this changed so that we cannot contract this through the Department of Aging anymore. And I was just wondering, we can still do Department of Corrections and Department of Education, but I was wondering if you have any thoughts about reconsidering that or reconfiguring that while you're in office to being able to support creative aging with discretionary funding as we go forward.
Well, we should certainly sit down and talk about that. I wasn't aware of that change coming from the state to the city. So, well, like that would be something we should sit down and discuss. I had a meeting with the Cultural Affairs Commissioner just today, and we have a great rapport. You know, there are so many concerns around funding, particularly for nonprofits, in addition to, you know, late reimbursements. I would love to understand what this change resulted in, why it was done, and how it's impacting our aging population. Because look, one of the reasons why, again, people want to move to New York City is because of arts and culture, but another reason why they want to stay here as they grow older is because of arts and culture. And the number of older New Yorkers is increasing. And so we should do everything that we can to accommodate them. That we did comment, as I recall, in our budget response to that and urge that it be reconsidered. So that's in our budget response you can see online. But we should talk about a strategy after this budget if it doesn't get fixed, how we can address it, or we should talk about you know, what advocacy we can do before that budget gets signed.
We're gonna help make that happen by connecting
Thank you.
Noel to your team. And Mr. Borough President, thank you very much, Brad. We appreciate
Thank you.
We know you have only 11 other events to go to in the next 3 hours.
Actually, only 8.
Only 8. Okay, but we will let you go, and we will talk about dog poop with our next guest. Don't worry.
Oh,
We'll
look,
follow that up. And
the man who
helicopters
brought the poop ferry to the Upper West Side.
Exactly. We're going to work it. So thanks again to you.
Good to see everyone.
Okay, thanks. So our next guest is someone many of you have learned about probably the last several years, as he served as the city council member representing a large portion of Lower Manhattan. And today, Erik Bottcher represents us on the Upper West Side in the New York State Senate, a job that Brad relinquished to run for borough president. So New York State Senator Erik Bottcher, welcome. Welcome to the Upper West Side Coalition Forum. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this opportunity to be here with you.
So if you can, to get us started here, give us your sense of the progress that was made regarding the budget that was negotiated and the work sort of underway that is especially important and impactful to New York City and our Upper West Side. Because that's who we are, and we're obviously targeted on those sort of issues. So please.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity, and the genesis of this forum was a few months ago when I started in the Senate, and I asked Steve, Steve, I want to get out and meet all the block associations, because I've represented for the last 4 years from Columbus Circle down to Canal Street, and I was the chief of staff to my predecessor for 7 years before that. So you could blindfold me and put me on any block south of Columbus Circle, and I could tell you who the community leaders are, what the issues are, what we're doing to address them. That is how I'm going to be on the Upper West Side. Just give me a few months to get out there and meet everyone. And this is a great opportunity for me to introduce myself to a lot of you and to get to know you. Steve, I'll start very quickly just by telling folks a little bit about myself, because for so many of you, it's our first time getting to know each other. As Steve said, I served on the city council for 4 years prior to succeeding now Borough President Brad Hoylman-Sigal on the state Senate. And as a city council member, I had a few key priorities, and one of my top priorities, if not the top priority, was a quality of life of the people in my council district. I really saw it as one of my primary responsibilities to ensure the adequate administration of city services, whether that was public safety, sanitation, transportation, you name it. So we honed in on those in a big way, fighting for more sanitation funding. Street trees. We planted over 1,000 new street trees in my council district over 4 years. I sponsored the Urban Forest Master Plan, which has now required the city to come up with a plan to do 30% tree coverage across New York City. I was meeting with Melissa just yesterday talking about this. So many of you have been working on this. Scaffolding laws, reform the way that street scaffolding, sidewalk sheds are put up around our city. Housing in our district, my city council district, I negotiated through a series of ULURP rezonings, thousands of units of permanently affordable housing in our district from north to south. Mental health, a critical priority of mine. I have made this a big priority, addressing the failure of our city, state, and federal governments on the issue of mental health. And Steve, you mentioned the homelessness problem out in our city, and we have people dying on the streets of New York City from untreated mental illness, which is a total shame on us for how badly we failed. And I've been very open as someone who, as a teen, is a survivor of suicide attempts, a survivor of depression, someone who spent a month in a mental health hospital when I was 15 years old. Talk about that, because the treatment that I got is unavailable to the vast majority of people in this country, and that's just wrong. So as a city council member, I passed legislation to require the city to offer mental health services in every family homeless shelter across New York City. When we started, only 9% of family homeless shelters offered on-site mental health services. This is how we help prevent people. Early diagnosis and treatment is how we prevent mental illness. So in the state Senate, I've been there 4 months, and it's been extraordinary. I really, really love this job. It's been so just incredibly meaningful getting to dive in. And already in the last few months, I've introduced and passed legislation that's going to make a big difference in people's lives. Legislation for tenants requiring, when someone is being evicted from their home, when a marshal is issuing eviction notices, in addition to posting a physical eviction notice, they have to post, because of our legislation, a digital copy of that eviction notice online within a day, giving tenants the opportunity to fight the eviction, to get to organize themselves in preparation for this very traumatic event in their lives. Legislation for tenants, when a tenant is living in a building that has diminished services and they apply to DHCR, the state housing agency, for a rent reduction because the landlord isn't providing heat, isn't providing water, isn't providing elevators, etc. Currently, if they're given a rent reduction, it's only from the date that DHCR, the housing agency, contacts the landlord about it. Because of our legislation, now it'll start when the condition started. This is something that we've seen again and again in our district. I passed legislation that will allow for the creation of more affordable housing for artists. We have in my former council district, West Beth down in Greenwich Village, Manhattan Plaza in Midtown, but it's been decades since New York has created new affordable housing specifically for artists because of ambiguities in the human rights law. Our legislation is going to clear that up. We passed it in the Senate, my bill in the Senate. Unfortunately, it didn't make it to the floor in the Assembly, but that's going to be a big priority of mine next year. I'll tell you about one more bill that I passed, and this is so meaningful to me. It's called Francesco's Law, named after a young man named Francesco who took his own life at the age of 17 when he gained access to an unsecured firearm in his parents' home. Francesco's Law, which we passed, will now require every firearm in New York State to be locked up when it's not under the direct control of the owner. So when a firearm is being stored, it's got to be stored safely. Common sense. A lot of people are thinking like, I can't believe that wasn't already the law. It is the law now. And I talk about, again, back to my story, the difference between my story and Francesco's story is that I did not have access to an unsecured firearm. This is going to save so many lives. These are just some of the things that I've been working on since being in the state Senate, starting in February. And I am so excited to work closely with all of you on the local level to address the issues that we're facing locally. I have Quentin Heilbronner is my liaison to Community Board 7. He came with me from my council office, born and raised on the Upper West Side. We do a lot of community-oriented events. We have a monthly tenants clinic. We did our wildflower seed giveaway in Verdi Square a few weeks ago. We have a blood pressure clinic coming up in a couple weeks. More and more things coming, paper shredding. We're going to be out in the community, and I really look forward to working closely with all of you to help make our city an even better place to live.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I want to urge brevity because we got a lot of questions that people wanted to get your reaction to, and we know we're not going to solve the problems here, but we're at least going to express the concerns that so many feel. So many of our neighbors tell us, young and not so young, that the state must do something to address the safety issues relating to bikes and e-bikes. And we are hoping that you are prepared to tackle what is clearly a complex challenge with many different views. We have issues of which on the Upper West Side, there are no two sides. There's 22 sides to every issue on the Upper West Side, and we know this is one of them. So again, briefly, but give us a sense of what you feel the state's role can be in trying to make some progress on this issue.
Yeah, this is an important issue to me, and it's something that in the city council, we spent a lot of time working on this, working with Gail Brewer and others to address this issue. At the city level, at the city council, I passed resolution calling on the city to implement cyclist education for kids. I took driver's ed in school. Young people need to be taught from a young age the rules of the road. We need a culture of safety in our city. I, on the state level, want to work on this issue with my state colleagues because it's an example of technology changing faster than our laws. This e-bike technology coming out, being all over the place, and our laws not keeping up. So in this next legislative session, I really look forward to our colleagues on how we can implement, licensing for e-bikes that are really more like motorcycles than they are cyclists. When I'm biking, and I do bike with a city bike, I feel very unsafe around these vehicles, when they're buzzing by me, when I'm stopped at a light and they're racing by, cutting off pedestrians. It's one of the biggest issues we hear about. We need to really work on implementing like registration at the point of sale, making sure that that actually happens, licensing of these vehicles, which is what they are, and obviously enforcement, which is a huge point of frustration because we at the city council, we have laws against riding on the sidewalk. We have laws against riding the wrong way. We have laws against blowing through red lights. Where's the enforcement? I suggested to the last mayor, and I think this mayor should do it, that they have a unit to specifically enforce these laws, but they should be themselves on e-bikes because you can't chase down a bike in a police cruiser or on foot. This mayor should do that. That way you could pass all these laws, but if they're not enforced, it's not effective. You'll see on the kiosks as well, a public service campaign that we developed when I was a city council member called Slow Your Roll, Respect the Stroll. Stop at red lights. Don't ride on the sidewalk. Ride with traffic. We're going to be rolling that out again from my Senate office in different languages. It's an all of the above approach to this problem, this real public safety problem for people of all ages.
All right, let me jump in here with another one. Board member Liz DeVito of the Manhattan 75 Block Association, she submitted a question. She said, there's concern that we know there's going to be a pied-à-terre tax being imposed, presumably on super wealthy New Yorkers, but there's concern that what's next is, in fact, raising property taxes that impact people who are not rich, people who do not have pied-à-terres, but people who own or rent property, and that this is where the state is going to have to go next. And again, I always urge brevity on these matters.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I oppose raising real estate taxes. I think that's a regressive tax. The pied-à-terre tax was a really targeted tax for out-of-state people of very high wealth. But if you apply across the board property tax increases, it's going to push out long-time residents. We have a lot of people who bought before the prices are what they are. We don't want them to have to sell and move. Also, property tax increases, they get pushed, they get passed along to renters, retail stores. So property tax increases, we should not be going down that road.
Let us follow up with that. Donald Press, who is my neighbor who leads the West 81st Street Block Association, he's got a concern about real estate taxes, and I think he understands it a whole lot better than I do. Donald, please join us.
First of all, Eric, a belated congratulations. Your reputation preceded you. Our friends in Chelsea who run the neighborhood news lamented your loss and our gain. So welcome.
I still represent them, so it's great. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question about what I consider to be the broken real estate tax system. I'm not going to deal with the overall pot and the increase in totality. I just want to deal with the inequity issue. I'd found that during Mamdani's campaign, I overheard two owners basically come to blows with each other with similar properties, but one of them essentially screaming that their taxes were so high already, and the other one screaming that he felt his taxes were too low and he was willing to pay more. And then they revealed each other's tax bill and was shocked to find that one of them was in fact a third of the other, which explained the disparity and why they disagreed on Mamdani's policy. And I understand government can't do everything. Fixing the housing shortage, we had demand and supply essentially doesn't doesn't want to be meddled with. But they can fix absurdities and of their own making. And a prime example is the New York State real estate tax system with its kind of jaw-dropping inequities. And they are huge between and within housing classes. And an example of the former was the $250 million condo that essentially was being taxed at a 14 million valuation because of the rental equivalent, which there is no real, doesn't really exist. And then on the other hand, the category of 1 to 3 family brownstones taxed at the full market rate, and then huge inequities within the class, so that even on our 81st Street block, we have two similar properties, one of which is basically paying a fourth of the taxes of the other, and it doesn't make for neighborly harmony. So we can't get into the details, but I'd like to know how aware and involved you are with the legislation bouncing around Albany to rewrite and fix the New York real estate tax system and those jaw-dropping inequities. And I know you knew, but if you come to any conclusions in your views.
Very familiar with this, and it goes back many, many years when I was chief of staff to New York City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. He and Mayor de Blasio instituted a commission to come up with recommendations for rewriting our property tax system. And that's basically what you would have to do, is redo the formulas, because you're right, there's inequities across the board. Guess what? It's so politically challenging because it would take, yeah, you lower taxes for this person, but you raise property taxes for these people. So it's been such a hot potato that no one's done anything with it. But we discussed as in the state legislature, I think that we understand that it's time to take this on and to really, for once and for all, fix the inequities in the property tax system. What I want to explore is the possibility of doing it in a way where you don't have to dramatically increase anyone's property taxes, that perhaps you just freeze the increases on the people who are paying too much until things balance out. I'm excited to work on this with my colleagues because it's a way of really leveling the playing field and making it fair across the board. I think we have to do it in a way that does not sharply increase property taxes for anyone, because people will lose their homes. They're going to lose their buildings. They're going to lose their co-ops or their condos. And we don't want that to happen. But we do need a fair system.
Thanks, Eric. Melissa, you mentioned before, Melissa Elstein is one of the people who runs the West 80s Neighborhood Association. She's taught us all about trees and about tree beds and all that. But she's also been a leader in the battle to address issues regarding helicopters. Melissa, you've got a question, I know, for Eric.
Thanks so much, Steve. Great to see you again, Eric. Many hats, literally. And this is we talked about our initiative with Love Your Street Tree Day, and I'm looking forward to our next project and you collaborating with us on the tree beds, hopefully along Amsterdam Avenue and the bike lane there. But in any event, wearing my Stop the Chop hat today. And now that you're in the Senate and not the City Council, slightly different jurisdiction. So that is what makes the helicopter problem in the New York area a little more challenging because of the two city-owned heliports at Downtown Heliport or Skyport now, East 34th Street. But then now you're in the Senate, so you have more jurisdiction over the West 30th Street heliport that's in the Hudson River Park. So my group, and we're a 501c3 and a 501c4 nonprofits, we're pretty much all volunteers. We've been working on this issue since we resurrected Stop the Chop back in, 2020, and making some progress. But we feel like it's time now to close down that West 30th Street to the fossil fuel non-essential helicopter traffic, which would be the commuters. In that at that heliport, there are no sightseeing as per a settlement order after a lawsuit. So that is something that we've been advocating for a while. The Hudson River, we call it a helicopter highway from your area in Chelsea all the way up past the GW Bridge. It's just nonstop helicopters, not just from West 30th. We know it's a broader problem, but it is just really endless helicopter noise. So we do believe it's time that we remove that heliport or close it to the non-essentials. eVTOLs as a whole other situation, but we can't wait for that to be certified by the FAA. The problem is just so great now. So I'll leave it at that. I know you're very familiar with Stop the Chop and the helicopter legislation, but I want to hear about your solutions for particularly, I guess, West 30th, given it's a state entity. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I, as a city council member, worked a lot on this with Gail Brewer and council member Farias and others. And we passed legislation to require the heliports to go electric as soon as is viable. The problem is we don't know exactly when that will be, and I agree with you that we need to move as quickly as possible. I attended a demonstration of the eVTOL technology on the east side, and it was pretty amazing how, I mean, it's basically as loud as a car. Right now, like you said, on the West 30s in Hudson River Park, it's extremely disruptive. And I do want to see unessential traffic phased out. I want to maintain infrastructure for the electric when it comes, because we don't know yet how, if this is going to be what they say it's going to be, which is an affordable green method of technology for the future. We don't know where it's going, and if we're going to need landing and takeoff locations around the city. I mean, could it be one day, could we be taking these electric air taxis to the airport for the price of an Uber? I don't know, but we have to be prepared as a city if and when that happens. But I want to work closely with you at Stop the Chop and everyone else to get a handle on this. The worst culprits are the sightseeing helicopters that hover over Central Park. I go to Shakespeare in the Park every summer, and there isn't a performance where you don't have a helicopter hovering. And even when it's like half a mile in the air, it sounds like it could be 20 feet over your head. And the actors in the play almost always make a joke about it in their Shakespearean sonnet. That's how bad it is. So we have to get a handle on it. And Melissa, I want to work with you and Stop the Chop on that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and it is a problem, just an aside, that depending on where one lives or works, the problem is actually different. So one of our board members, he works in central Brooklyn, and he lives in a brownstone, and he doesn't deal with the sightseeing helicopters at all, whether they're from downtown Skyport or New Jersey. He's dealing 100% with Blade flying across Brooklyn to get to the Hamptons or the airports, and they're very low. They're sometimes 200 feet above. So, we know our experiences from our neighborhood, so it's important to remember, because we hear this all the time. Like, he'll say, oh, the worst problem is Blade and the commuters, and then someone who's near Central Park will be, oh, it's New Jersey. People live near the river. We get it all. So yeah, it's, anyway, I'll leave it at that. And yes, let's continue working on this together and finally resolve this problem. It's a safety problem, a pollution problem, a health issue. And it's just a waste of fossil fuels in this time of climate change. It's kind of absurd. We're still dealing with big helicopters ferrying people around for joyrides, or they could take the train or an Uber for a lot less, environmental costs. All right, I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, Eric, I know that elected officials like to be associated with great achievements and want to be align themselves with things they're proud of. And I only slightly hesitate to raise the fact that you may be the leading figure who has talked about dog waste in our city. Okay. And quite frankly, there's a lot of people, it's uncomfortable to talk about. It sounds a little silly, but it's become an issue that I think in a lot of streets there it's a matter of almost civility that something is going, and obviously it's not the dog's fault. None of us want all that, but something has happened that we need to retrain and re-understand how we as citizens and human beings are going to conduct ourselves in relationship to our pets and their bodily functions and needs. And we can have cute slogans to get people's attention. But at some point, there's got to be some there. There's got to be some way that we are actually going to affect the behavior of human beings because so many people see this as simply an outrageous situation. So I know you don't have one answer to give us in a 20-second, response, but give us a little hint on how you think we ought to be addressing this.
Yeah, it's a symptom of a larger problem. I think people not picking up to their dogs is a symptom of something bigger. And there's been a real, sadly, in my opinion, a fraying of the social compact. And you see it manifested in different ways. You see it with people who litter. I was on the subway platform the other day and a woman accidentally dropped a big Dunkin' Donuts iced tea. And do you think she picked it up? She walked away and left it on the counter. I saw a guy with a plastic bottle by Columbus Circle bend down and insert the plastic bottle into the storm drain as if the storm drain was a trash can. And by the way, there was a trash can 10 feet away. Did I confront the guy? He was much bigger than I am. But I did, try to, I gave him
This
a
would have been
look.
a better story.
Yeah, I
If
know,
you
I
could have
know.
stepped up
But
there.
what is it? What makes a person do things like that? What makes them stop caring about the city that they live in or other people? I think with respect to dog waste, we've got to start enforcing the law, which is that it's not legal. And this is something that I struggled with when Commissioner Tisch was the sanitation commissioner, and I very frequently, attempted to get them to start issuing tickets. There is a bill in the city council now that the current sanitation chair, Justin Sanchez, has that would require the Department of Sanitation, when they receive at least 3 complaints from the same block within a week, to inform the property owners of the obligation to either remove the waste, to address the issue, which is something that the DSNY hasn't necessarily been doing. I have obviously our big public safety campaign, There Is No Poop Fairy, which is just to put on people's consciousness and remind people that it's not okay. But we as a society across the board need to do better at respecting each other and respecting our city that we all share. 8.5 million people living in a small area. For that to work, there needs to be a common set of there needs to be an expectation that we will live within a set of common rules together. And if it's a free-for-all where everyone feels like they can do whatever they want without consequence, it falls apart. And we can't allow that. We have to have rules that we live by, and that includes pick up after your dog.
I got you. I want to respect your time also because I know you have another event coming up. We intend to work with you on all of these issues, and we hope to come up with being part of the solution with you to address these issues. This is the beginning of a dialogue that we hope will
Yes.
continue for a long time, and wish you great success because your success will be the success of our communities also. So
Thank
thanks
you,
so much.
Steve. I
Thanks.
really appreciate this and everything you do. It's just so incredibly meaningful.
Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in and joining us. And we'll do some more of this very soon. So have a good night. And I would not be proper to not say go Knicks.
Go Knicks!
Go Knicks. Okay, everybody. Have a good
Take
night. And
care.
thank you.
Thanks, Eric.